Okay, here's another video. Let's say you got this done. If you get motivated and adventurous, you can expand this. Let me just start drawing. So what I'm going to do is add some more objects to this, and it's very easy to do. Let's just put the one up here that you had. I'm just going to do this very quickly without explanation. You know what I'm doing. I'm just going to start sketching, and I'm going to end up with a pretty cool composition of perspective blocks. So I can sketch that in. Okay, so you've got this, and maybe you have another one down here, but I can just put behind this. Now watch, right behind this is another object. Here's the top of it. I don't see the bottom of it, it's behind here, but I'll just imagine a point. So that point down here where that line ends goes up to the vanishing point. So it would reveal itself right about there. Okay, and out that way. See, there's the hidden bottom of that line right here. So I just use that as my reference point. So I'm going to put in the end of that building. So this building sits behind that block, but it's all in perspective. Let's do another one down here. Let's see, right about here. I'm going to throw a little flat building in here. And if you do these lines lightly, as you sketch in your lines to the vanishing point, they'll tend to disappear when you darken everything in. I'm doing the same thing in every one of these, just going to the vanishing point. Now I'm going to put a taller building in here. It's behind this building right here. This is kind of how you'd see it. Your eye level is kind of within the height of the building. So this is back behind here someplace. It doesn't really matter where it is, but that is going to go to the vanishing point. This goes off to the vanishing point, and I'm not going to see much more of that. I'll let it disappear behind this building here. And maybe the bottom of it's right in here, so you'd see this bottom, that would go to the vanishing point. So this would actually be behind that building. And let's just end it right about there. So you can just keep adding to this. If you do this lightly, you can draw things in front of this. I could add more things in front, but I can just keep adding buildings back behind this to the vanishing point. And let's go way across. And it reveals itself. Say, here's the end point of it right here. Well, it's going to drop down, and maybe it's right about in here someplace. Okay, so you can just start adding to this and make this entire city. If you do things in front, let's put something in front of this one. Not like this. And this is just going to be a thin. So if I had made this real faint to begin with, I wouldn't have the problem of showing that other building through it. But you know, if you do it light to start with, then you come back and darken it to the vanishing point, to the vanishing point. So if I wanted to, I could come back with a real heavy marker and really beef these up, and you'll see how. So you can just keep expanding this, and you know, it still works this way. It even works this way. You're looking down almost like a on the top of the city. Anyway, if you then darken these up, those thinking lines are going to tend to start disappearing because they're so much thinner. Okay, so this is just something else you can kind of play around with. Even once you get your 4 homework assignments, you can start adding more into this. You can see how I overlap these. And again, what I did, I just visualized a point down here. I'll draw the dotted line in. That line would go down, and I just arbitrarily ended it right here. And that's my line going off to the vanishing point. Okay. You can even expose it again down here someplace. if that block were like that, you'd see it kind of sitting back behind everything. So that's a good little exercise. You can just keep adding blocks and overlapping them until you have this whole massive array of blocks. It's a good way to learn 2-point perspective. You know, and you can put a few at eye level. Let me do one more at eye level here. Eye level is what you're, like I've said many times, that's what you're going to see when you get into town. You don't see any at the top of the building or the bottom, obviously. And maybe that disappears behind this building. So that disappears back in here someplace. I could put another one. Let me do one more here. This is like a tall, long, here's my reference corner, the corner that's closest to you, and I'm going to bring it all the way down to here. So here's my 2 top points. You can see as you move closer to this vanishing point, this angle becomes much steeper. Look at the angle here compared to way over here. And conversely, it's the same on this side. This is a real steep angle, but as it swings around over to this side, the angle is not as steep. Anyway, so let's bring this out. And that's going to go to the vanishing point. You're not going to see a whole lot of this building. Maybe it peaks itself over here, peaks itself out from behind those buildings. So that you only see this portion of it. But you can just keep going with this thing. Okay, that's it. So that's something to practice with. Wednesday, we'll be getting into, you know, I wanted to show you the perspective. Wednesday, we're going to do an elevation. And we're going to watercolor it, and then we're going to walk around and look for small little vignettes of perspective. Let me just show you what that might look like. I don't have a photograph, but there's right near the building we're going to do a elevation of. There's a column, and it looks something like this. It's a brick column. So, you know, this we're going to have to use to a vanishing point. And those bricks, and I don't know if there's a flower thing on top of it. I can't remember. There might be flowers on top of it. But those bricks, I have to imagine a vanishing point. And when I see my eye level on that column right next to the building is right about here, probably, as I remember it. So those bricks are going to go straight across. They don't show any angle. But then as they start to go down, they've got to start going to that vanishing point. Those would be the brick joints. This one, you know, the vanishing point is way off the page. And that's where you start to learn how to eyeball things. And now above the horizon, it slopes downward. And then we'll put in the bricks. We'll watercolor this bad boy. But that's something else we're going to do too. Just a small, and maybe you see part of the ground down here, whatever, part of the building. You know, maybe we might show like part of the window. And what I'm going to keep you from doing is doing too much detail. Let the watercolor technique do the rest of these leaves and the brick. I'll show you how to do brick, but we'll do some perspective vignettes. So just a small thing, just to kind of get you used to doing perspective. And then we'll move into larger buildings. In most cases, you're not going to see entire buildings all by themselves. They're going to be surrounded by trees. You're going to see something more like this. You might see a tree line. Let me just throw in a tree line here. Maybe there's another tree in front of that, a little bigger. Depending on where you are in town, here's a tree here. Maybe there's a smaller tree here. Maybe some bushes down here. You know, this is where I might take a photograph just so I can see more of the detail. But that's enough right there. And then behind that, you might see a building coming up out of those trees. And then maybe there's another building behind that. That's more like what you're going to see in town. You're not going to see very many buildings where you see all the way down to the bottom. There's a few, but that makes a much nicer composition. And then maybe there's some foreground leaves in a bush that's real close to you where you can actually see the individual leaves. So every drawing, every sketch needs to have foreground, which are these individual leaves that you can see on a bush that's real close to you. Middle ground, the trees, and then the background. Or if this is a smaller building, maybe you even see a small tree line behind that, maybe a few trees peeking up way off, back behind the building. And the sky would be your background. So foreground, just kind of showing some of those bigger leaves. And the watercolor is going to do a lot of the work. Foreground in this area, middle ground, and basically your buildings become the background. That's about all I would do to watercolor. I might show some of the detail, on the building itself, but I'm going to let the watercolor do a lot of the work. A couple thinking lines to show some of the window columns. Something like that. But that's when I do a sketch, that's about as much detail as I'll put in. When I'm done with the watercolor and it dries, then I can come back and if I need to put in some more detail. The mistake I see most people make, they draw too much at the very beginning. You want to get just the basic perspective, plan out your composition, watercolor, and then come back and start putting in more of the detail. Okay. All right, that's enough. We'll see you guys Wednesday. Hope this helps. And you know what? Just the only way that you can learn how to draw, I can show you as much as I can, but you've got to sketch. I'll guarantee, again, I'll say it. I'll guarantee you, if you sketch 10 to 15 minutes a day, religiously, okay, you will get better. And your sketches at the start will look terrible, possibly. Okay, don't let that impede you because that's part of the learning process. And remember, 75% looking, 25% drawing. So whatever it is you're drawing, a vacuum cleaner, and select simple objects around the house. Simple objects, a toaster that's kind of boxy, a real boxy looking chair. And study it and look at those angles. Use that clock method. And then if you screw it up, don't worry, because 2 weeks from now, wow, my drawings are getting better. Okay, that's because you're drawing more and you're starting to see how the angles look, the proportions. That's what you're looking for, is the angles and the proportions. This lines up with this. This part of the object is right below that other part. That's the kind of stuff you look at. Okay, we'll see you guys Wednesday.